Welcome to Unbelievable Stories. Today's story is full of shocking twists and real drama. Subscribe and like to stay updated. Let's dive in. I believed my life was built on love and honesty, but beneath the surface, a storm of deception had been growing without my knowledge. My entire world collapsed. Finding out that my son wasn't truly mine shook me to my core. The thoughts in my head constantly echoed with the pain of a betrayal I never saw coming. The woman I cherished had been living a lie. She admitted, "From the moment I became pregnant with you, I've wondered." It was a sunny late autumn day, and my Mazda needed some work, so after dropping it off, I decided to take a ride home instead of back to work. With yard work waiting for me, it felt like the right choice. Our backyard is big, and I was deep in it raking leaves when I saw my brother's blue Corvette pull up. Here we go, I thought. He usually shows up to borrow things and rarely returns them. As I walked closer, I heard my kid Ethan shout out, "Hey, Dad! What brings you to the land of chickens?" Why did my son call my brother Dad, and why call this place the land of chickens? My brother responded, "I'm here to return Uncle Dave's saw. I cut its cord by mistake, and he needs to fix it so I can keep working on my stuff." Then he asked, "Is Clueless Ryan around?" That's dumb. Clueless Ryan, that's me, Ryan. And I don't see myself that way. Maybe I am. After all, I chose to hang back, staying outside the garage and listening to their hurtful chat. I even recorded it on my phone. Clueless Ryan isn't here. He's hardly ever back before 5, and I don't hang around him much anyway, so no, I don't think he's in, Ethan said. Then my brother mentioned school being out and Ethan wanting to stay with him because it was more fun than here. My brother seemed open but mentioned that Mom wanted Ethan around, especially now, and that he'd speak to her about Ethan staying with him during the summer. Then the shocker, Ethan asked, "Why doesn't Mom leave Clueless and move in with you?" I didn't know she was often at his place, but things began clicking in a bad way. Maybe I am clueless. My heart sank as Kevin boasted, "Ever since I got her pregnant with you, I've asked her the same every month. She says no, you're great in bed, but you'd make a terrible husband. I have a husband I love, and being with him feels like I'm the luckiest woman alive. Sure, I have earth-shaking times with you, but he makes me feel loved." I was crushed. Learning my son might not be mine biologically, my wife's affair with my brother, and their kid being Ethan was too much. I stumbled back to work, sat on the swing where I would push Ethan for hours, and wept, ending up with a huge mud puddle from my tears. What to do next? I remembered the DNA tests we took, genetist. How could those be wrong unless Jessica swapped my sample with Kevin's? That was a low blow, denying me the truth about Ethan. With that thought of proof gone, I had to face my reality. I'm Ryan Anderson, 42, not much heavier than in college days. I wasn't a jock, but I loved running and did well in track. Running is harder now with family and work, but I still manage, even running for charity sometimes. I'm CFO and COO at Anderson's Machine Company, a business my great-grandfather started, which now makes parts for aerospace. My dad is the president, and Kevin, my brother, despite being completely his opposite, tall, big, loud, and a bully, works as the chief marketing officer. Unlike me, sports got him through college while I worked hard for my education. Seeing my life, my family, my company, it all felt different now. How do I deal with this betrayal and the lies? What comes next for me and my family? He wasn't the best at talking shop, but boy could he spin tales to keep customers smiling. Don't think he wasn't right for the job, though. He helped the company a lot. Like any family business, we bumped heads sometimes. Take when Kevin asked for a piece of the sales pie. It wasn't a wild ask in our line, but the guy was already making good money, same as me. That's when I saw my chance to argue that all the cash from my patents should be mine. George said yes to Kevin easy peasy, but I had to push hard to get my due. As for meeting my wife, Jessica, it was all thanks to her standout behind. She showed up in baggy shorts and a t-shirt for a charity 5K, working for the local high school library. I was fresh out of college, working with Dad. I would seen plenty of backsides by then, but hers was something else. That view from a tiny waist to strong, perfectly shaped cheeks had me hooked before I ever saw her face. I could have outrun her, but why pass up such a view? When the race started, I hung back, watching her ponytail bounce until she got far enough ahead. Seemed like I wasn't the only one enjoying the scenery, but soon I was the only one left on her trail. Seeing her from the front was just as nice, with folks turning heads as her shirt jumped with every step. Then someone dropped a water bottle. She tried dodging it and nearly fell. Quick as a flash, I was by her side keeping her steady. Thanks, she smiled. I'm Jessica. Hi Jessica, I'm Ryan. Mind if I run with you just in case? Her smile widened. Sure. And that was the start. Jessica was teaching high school English. A year after that race, we got hitched in her family church. 2 years of marital bliss passed before we tried for kids. Despite all the trying, nothing. We tried everything, keeping track of the best times, but no joy. Neither of us was keen on getting tested just yet. I was set on having kids, but we decided to just enjoy being together. And just like that, Jessica missed a period. Then another. She kept quiet, not wanting to curse it, and when she missed the second, I was over the moon. Family means everything to me, a belief deep-rooted in the Anderson tree. Our home flaunts photos of generations proud of our long standing in the community. But pregnancy wasn't easy. Jessica was bedbound the last 2 months, doctor's orders. The birth was tough. We nearly lost Jessica and our boy, Ethan. His cozy stay in Jessica's womb meant head grown too big. The cesarean was a must. Mid-surgery, the doc warned us another pregnancy could kill mother and child. We couldn't risk it, so Jessica had surgery to make sure there'd be no more kids. Ethan became our everything. Ethan was all energy, a blur of activity. He and I played hard, much to Jessica's worry. He did okay at school, a bit above average, but when he turned 14, things changed. We went from long chats to him being too glued to his phone and games for me. Push him to talk, and he'd get sharp. Seemed he thought my job wasn't manly because he was now bigger and stronger than me. Meanwhile, Jessica, ever the star, became principal at Roosevelt Academy, focusing on kids who struggle with school and behavior. But those tough days took their toll, leading to snappy comebacks at home over nothing big. Still, whatever the day brought, at night it was just us, as close as ever. Our love life couldn't complain one bit. I couldn't believe it when I heard my brother tell Ethan he was his dad and that he had been with Jessica for 16 long years. No way, I thought, but then again, what did I really know? The fact that Ethan looked a lot like Kevin and George and not like me gave me a big clue something felt off, either in my mind or in my gut. As I thought about it that night, I watched Jessica very closely. She didn't act like someone who was cheating. Dinner was fun and full of life. Ethan left to pick up friends and watch a movie until 11 p.m. With Ethan gone, Jessica and I started to clean up. She told me to load the dishwasher while she went to the bathroom. When I turned around, she was only wearing a lace apron. She acted as if it was normal and told me to get moving because she had plans for me that night. We had fun and teased each other until the kitchen was spotless. Then it was off to bed, where I experienced some of the best lovemaking ever. I watched her closely. She was into it, and reacted to every move I made. Her belly and neck showed she was really feeling it, signs that she was not faking her passion. After, we cuddled and shared our love for each other. The next morning, we planned to have lunch at my parents' house for my dad, George's 60th birthday. Jessica didn't like my Mazda, and Ethan wanted to go alone, so we all took her outie. When we arrived, my mom, Catherine, hugged us one by one, Jessica, then Ethan, then me. I watched for any sign between Kevin and Jessica. Kevin gave Ethan a big hug, then reached for Jessica. She hugged him back, but it seemed forced from her side. I thought to myself about looking into the possible affair and who Ethan's real dad might be without being too obvious. During a quiet moment, I tried to catch Kevin off guard with a work matter. Jessica's reaction told me I was on to something. Then Dad announced he was stepping down as president of our family business, Anderson Machine Company. Kevin would take over, and I would get 75% of his salary plus my income from patents, so would end up making the same. Jessica gave me a warm smile, but the idea of Kevin leading, who knows nothing about running a business, worried me. Kevin bragged about being the alpha, and I should just accept losing. Dad intervened, stating he's still in charge as the owner and will make sure the company founded by our ancestors stays strong. He reminded us of our family legacy, pointing to the pictures on the wall of past Anderson men. "Which one is your granddad?" I asked Dad, wanting to know more about our family history. He pointed to the first picture on the left, with my granddad next to him, and then him. I should have known that. Seeing the pictures, I realized I don't really look like any Anderson alive or gone. My build, hair, and face all different. Kevin and Ethan, sure, they fit right in, but not me. Mom's shoulders got small, her face gray as Dad's turned red. When it went quiet with everyone's eyes shifting around, I knew it was time to stir things up, so I spilled the big secret to see how they'd deal with it. "Ryan, you should know our family secret," Dad started. "Before your mom and I tied the knot, she partied too hard one night and got pregnant. We were all so close, so she thought you were mine. We got married without knowing for sure. When you were born small and sick, we worried you nearly didn't make it. When you got really ill, it was years later when we realized you weren't my actual son. Your mom had been with someone else. You looked a lot like that guy. When DNA tests got easy to do, we checked, and yes, you are not my biological son, but Kevin is. This came out of nowhere. I was trying to learn about Ethan's dad and got hit with this. Things turned messy. Mom finally said that doesn't change our love for you. We raised you as ours." Hearing that was good, but then I asked, "What about Ethan? Why does he look more like you and Kevin?" Dropping another heavy topic, I learned that because Jessica and I couldn't have kids and thought I might not be able to because of my sickness as a kid, my family made a plan. They decided Kevin should help Jessica have an Anderson child. Jessica first said no, but later saw how it could be good for everyone, including me, wanting a family. They didn't want anyone to find out but knew it might because Andersons look a certain way and DNA can tell tales. I was lost in a storm of feelings as Mom and Jessica comforted me, both crying. Mom kept saying how proud she was, and Jessica called me her love. Dad hoped I would see the love in this, but I felt betrayed. Ethan then said something hurtful about wishing Kevin was his real dad. Jessica defended me fiercely. I was upset. Why keep this from me for so long? Didn't you think I would be hurt finding out this way? Dad explained they couldn't risk telling me. They needed me for the family business as I was key to its success. They even admitted to paying me way less than I could earn elsewhere because it helped them more. This was a lot to take in, me brother helping my wife for a baby and them keeping me underpaid for their gain. After we both arrived home, Jessica went to shower and dress while I sat on the porch, feeling like my life was a lie. There was no time frame for the next sex session. I would only contact Kevin if I needed harsh, raw sex. Sometimes it was twice a month, sometimes there was a 3-month hiatus. Kevin didn't mind how often I visited his residence. To summarize, Ryan, I returned to screwing Kevin because it humiliates me and helps me get off my high horse and stop being so egotistical. Rough sex was all I needed, not because you were a lousy lover, but because I had an uncontrollable desire. Besides, I was humiliated that you treated me the way I wanted Kevin to treat me. You are a really gentle and caring person who always treats me like a queen. I was utilizing him instead of therapy to work on my superiority complex. Looking back, I see I made a huge mistake, and am sorry I damaged the best man I've ever met. I hope that after this is all over, you will remember the times we were happy together. That's a far-fetched story, at the very least. I know the majority of the facts, or do I? She quietly said. Yes, you now own complete knowledge of the facts. Do I actually know? Let's figure out what I don't know. When was the last time he screwed you? The last time I saw him, I was kicking his kidneys following the horrific experience at your parents' place. I assume he did not use a condom as his head swayed. Did you ever imagine that Kevin was wondering if I may give you an STD? Another shrug was the only response. Did we ever have sex on the same day that you cheated with Kevin? She became pale at this question. I always do it there first, then at home. That did not answer my question. How many times, Jessica? Not many, Ryan, but there were occasions when you truly wanted to make love to me, and I hated turning you down. I told you I would rather suck you off than have you go down on me. Now that you've dodged the topic, let's get to the real truth. Have you ever given me sloppy seconds? I did not keep note of that. I did not want to do that to you, however. It is possible that this occurred a few times over the years. I can't give you a number, but it probably happened. The lasagna I had for lunch at Giovanni's Bistro was now bubbling like empty volcano lava. The prospect of sloppy seconds was too much for me to handle. Just like Vesuvius, the hot lava roared out of my mouth, causing full projectile vomiting. Suddenly, the table and Jessica were saturated from my undigested prior meal. I stumbled to the door, leaving behind a path of little meat and pasta chunks. Jessica's tears burned my ears. I imagined she didn't like puke on her carpet while wearing her outfit. Unfortunately, no one in the courthouse would touch the paperwork, so my attorney had to reprint them. 2 weeks later, the divorce was finalized, with me receiving half of the education fund and auto proceeds. She gets the house until scumbag Ethan completes high school. I'm sure he was furious, but because he no longer wanted me in his life, I and all of my money left as well. Because I had not fed the ungrateful scum-sucker, I refused to pay child support. If ordered by the court, I would modify the file to adultery and sue all of the Andersons for fraud. Nobody wanted to face that embarrassment. I was already embarrassed to be a Anderson. During my self-imposed seclusion, I was torn about watching the video files I had downloaded from Kevin's office. I was still not over Jessica's adultery, let alone calm enough to observe two people I despise having sex. Each file had a name, and I got chills when I saw the name Rachel on a little file. Nathan Brown, one of my best pals, has a wife named Rachel. Nathan was 2 years ahead of me in high school, but we didn't talk much because he was a jock and I was a bookworm. However, this geek was chosen to assist the jock in completing his necessary English lesson. He excelled in science and math but struggled in English class. We became friends throughout the semester until he departed to attend a tiny college on a football scholarship. After graduating from college, he returned to our town to be close to his elderly parents. He approached me about employment, and I was glad to see a concentration on the types of math and engineering that would be useful in our shop. He was recruited on my recommendation, and we were able to rekindle our friendship. A few years ago, Nathan and Rachel reached a tough patch in their relationship. Rachel had attended girls' night out, and had either been drugged or drank too much, based on what I could tell. Either way, she had sex with someone. She felt humiliated and notified Nathan as soon as she got home, but the harm had already been done. They had 2 little boys by this point. Divorce would have been disastrous. The Rachel file was the tiniest video, beginning with her staggering into a hotel room. It was clear that a cell phone camera was on the dresser. She walked like a zombie and began to stare at the king-size bed. Kevin entered the picture and undressed the stunned Rachel. I assumed there was no audio, but that was because there was no talking. Rachel had impressed me in a little bikini at the lake, but seeing her naked left me speechless. Now I understood why Nathan did not want to get rid of her. Kevin pushed her down to a sitting position on the bed. There was no tenderness or love for the pair. He just got right to it, being the inert Rachel till he grunted. After having fun, he took a drink from the mini-fridge and lighted a cigarette. She shuffled slowly to the bathroom, calmed herself, dressed, and departed. Neither had spoken a word during the sex show. Nathan had always wanted to know what had happened, and now I had some evidence in case he wanted to exact retribution. I invited Nathan over to my apartment to discuss something very private. After a few beers, he inquired about my top-secret discussion. Unbeknownst to me, Nathan, I discovered a video of your wife having sex with another man. It indicates that she was either drugged, inebriated, or both. I can tell you who it was, show you the video, or both, whichever hurts you the least. It took some time for the huge man to collect himself, tears welling up in his eyes, and he was breathing deeply. I put my hand on his shoulder without saying anything. Who was he? Nathan asked, his voice barely a whisper. Kevin, I said. However, she despises him and considers him to be a complete jerk. Why would she screw Kevin? As I already stated, Nathan, she seems spaced out. I'll show you the video to prove she did not initiate that tryst. After seeing the film, he recognized the anonymous guy who screwed her after a girls' night out several years ago. She had no idea what his name was or why they were having sex. She was sobbing hysterically while narrating the incident to Nathan. Attempting to remain cool, he questioned why he would mistreat an employee's wife like this. She claimed it was the only time, and he never contacted her again. My hypothesis, Nathan, is that he had no idea what her last name was and simply drugged the most attractive woman and screwed her. He didn't need her name, only her body. He rose up and said, "Thank you, Ryan. Interestingly, this is quite beneficial. I'm pleased I forgave her since she was upset and regretful. Now that I know the facts, I'm not sure if I'll share them with Rachel. They'll have to play it by ear. Can I get this video, Ryan?" "You certainly can. I believe it's the only copy. Would you be sad if your brother suffered an accident within the next 6 months? Be my guest. It will work in my favor because I have already kicked his nuts once, so I will be a suspect. Make sure I know the time so I can prepare my alibi." "Thank you, Ryan. You are like a brother to me." "Yeah, and you're a far better brother than I was allotted." We exchanged hugs, and he added over his shoulder, "Keep in touch." I did not spend much time reviewing Jessica and Kevin's videos. It was simply not worth the effort, it just messed up my mind. It was time for me to just destroy all of the videos with Jessica's name on them. I never wanted to see those two together again. As I was deleting the files, fate intervened and made me press play instead of delete. It was far more awful than I could have anticipated. Jessica was on her knees looking up at the camera with a happy expression. She didn't lie to me when she said she forgot about her husband, family, friends, and school since Kevin was going to screw her. She was clearly having a great time doing this. Of course, she barked like a witch. She was the woman of my dreams and the love of my life. Debasing oneself in this manner was terrible. This sight wiped away any positive memories I had of her. 2 weeks later, Nathan stopped by for a beer to thank me for answering some unpleasant questions that had been bothering him for years. Also, thank you for showing him that Rachel was sexually attacked and not having an affair. He had the notion of using the remaining recordings to destroy unfaithful wives and his sister's relationships, which had been shattered by Kevin's misdeeds. I gladly handed over the remaining filthy recordings to him. My casting of nets for a new employer was going well. One of Anderson's key competitors contacted me and asked that I go 100 miles to their city for an interview. This was the first time I would felt happy in a long time. Of course, I made myself accessible at any time and date they desired to meet. The Thompson Industries was led by CEO and President Olivia Donan. My discussion with Olivia, who insisted on just call me Olivia, went extremely well, and I was offered a very great employment package comparable to my peers. There was one caveat: I needed to meet with the head of Watson Enterprises for a personality evaluation. Given all I had been through over the last few months, I was concerned about what they could discover in my thoughts. The owner, Chloe Reynolds, was the person I was meant to meet the next morning at 10. Watson Enterprises conducted more than just personality assessments, they also handled all of the human resources duties in manufacturing, including staff recruitment, corporate governance, and reporting. Olivia stated that as a consummate engineer, this relieved him greatly, a guy who enjoys projects more than paperwork. Their office was quite modern and elegant, a departure from Donan's typical production office. After telling the gorgeous receptionist my name, I was handed coffee and a couch to sit on until Chloe saw me. Again, "No, Mr. Reynolds, it's Chloe D." Surprisingly, Chloe D was a really gorgeous woman in her early 30s. She didn't appear startled that I was struggling to find words as we shook hands in a hard yet feminine grip that I found quite appealing. We spent the next few hours talking about my personality, tastes, and engineering philosophy. Our interactions were courteous and friendly. She carefully explained why I was leaving my legacy job at Anderson. She understood she wasn't permitted to ask any personal questions, but she left the door open for me to tell her anything I wanted. All I told her was that I was passed over for president and underpaid for the work I did. Ryan, it's 11:45, and I bet you want to go to lunch. I'll email my report to Olivia, who will get back to you with more information. Would it be against corporate policy for me to offer to take you to lunch? You know, like taking the new employee on a Chamber of Commerce tour? She flashed me a mischievous look and replied, I would like to do that. We set off on the first of many lunches, which developed into evenings and more over the following couple of months. I was slow to establish a relationship but willing to spend time with her since I enjoyed being around her. Based on her reactions, she appeared satisfied with the speed and development of a friendship. At this time, Anderson Manufacturing was struggling financially. While Anderson had the cash to cover all of the payments, it was simply not available. George had to move swiftly since merchants and suppliers needed to be paid. He had to use his emergency asset to keep the business running. The 140 acres of prime development near town were worth millions. However, the prospect of mortgaging this property chilled the Andersons, who had owned the land for more than a century. The mortgage funds kept the company running until George moved to the Bermuda to take possession of the money. However, the reputational harm was significant. Instead of allowing Anderson to pay for material after 14 days, vendors demanded payment up front. This had a significant impact on their operational capital, and the mortgage was not paid off as the Cayman money returned to the States. Chloe D. slowly learned about the eruption in my personal and professional lives. She was quite understanding as her world suffered an explosion caused by a UPS vehicle that ran over and killed her husband 2 years ago. He founded Watson Enterprises and was the brains behind it. She worked alongside him and kept the firm running after he left. Meanwhile, Nathan told me that Kevin was attacked in a dark bar parking lot. After receiving multiple strikes from a steel pipe, Kevin was asking for mercy as he lay on the ground. He reached up with his right hand. The attacker seized Kevin's middle finger and busted it all the way back until he heard bones cracking. Following a yell of pain, Kevin passed out and missed the attacker's scolding, "That is for shoving your finger into my wife." My employment has provided me with a high amount of enjoyment. I settled in, and since Anderson didn't have a non-compete provision, I began pirating their best customers. They knew I had left the company and were delighted to obtain my contact information. I wasn't the salesman Kevin was, but I knew what they needed and how to get it done better, faster, and cheaper than Anderson. All Kevin knew about our products was that they had to be paid for by someone. Kevin refused to leave. There was a lot to call on customers. It seemed that he was constantly being harmed in some way. The relationship with Chloe was usually great. After he left a bar 6 months later and the divorce was finalized, she was not only gorgeous, lovely, intelligent, and compassionate, but she was also enjoyable to be around. After several dates and growing closer, our evenings became more physical, with lots of touching, rubbing, and kissing. Chloe was acting like she wanted to be in bed with me. One evening, after dancing closer than usual, she noticed the indicators of my sexual desire in her while her leg rubbed between my legs. She looked up with those wonderful eyes and asked, "Should we leave now?" "Absolutely." Then I kissed her more passionately than before. On the way home, we couldn't stop holding hands. It was nearly dangerous, but how can we stop the flow of endorphins? There was no button-popping or shirt-ripping contest as we carefully undressed each other in her bedroom. We both had our hands in unusual areas, breathing, and heart rates were increasing. "So, did you bring any protection?" she murmured into my ear. "No, I'm sterile. That's why Jessica had Kevin's baby." "What did the doctor say about your sterility?" "No doctor. My mother claimed I had the mumps as a child, which is why I couldn't get Jessica pregnant." "No doctor?" The mother who lied to you about who fathered you and persuaded your wife to hurt your sibling? If I were you, I would believe nothing she said. Get your own doctor's opinion. Now, I'm ready for some excellent sex. By morning, I would had at least 4 sex sessions and suspected shed quadrupled that total. After we'd used all of our sexual energy, the subject of my fertility came up. I pledged to visit a fertility doctor and get my sperm checked. Of course, I would have to wait a week for my body to rebuild anything comparable to the sperm inventory I obtained this weekend. After a horrible experience in the doctor's office, I was told to return in a week for the results. Chloe expressed interest in this topic, so I invited her to the next doctor's appointment. The doctor quickly informed us that I was not infertile. My squadron of baby producers numbered just 25 million, although the average is between 50 and 100 million swimmers. My swimmer's mobility was similarly within the typical range. He added that unless we were anxious to have a baby right soon, he would recommend going about our lives with no worry about pregnancy, and that taking vitamins and not drinking too much would help. He advised against trying too hard to get pregnant. It's similar to a game of roulette with your sperm hitting your partner's red or black ball pocket. Your reduced quantity of swimmers simply did not meet her egg. The odds are slim but not impossible. Chloe D went back on birth control, and I used a condom for a few months. We figured it was time to get a place together. We decided to wait until after the new year because it was getting close to Christmas. But first, she asked me to meet her parents. She had told them she was seeing a nice guy, that's what she said anyway, and they wanted him to come to their place. This could be the beginning of me having a real family again. I was apprehensive as we approached a huge, unassuming house. As soon as the door opened, Chloe jumped in front of me, grabbing the man dressed in gray trousers and a red Christmas sweater. She made a quarter turn to the right and added, "Daddy, I would like you to meet the man I love, Ryan Anderson." "Ryan, meet my father." I interrupted her and said, "Mister, don't upset him. I didn't realize she was your daughter." "Wow, I'm not sure what to say." "Say hello, Ryan, and enter the house." "Olivia, why didn't you tell me your father was the CEO? Do you think I would be interested in that?" "Yes, Ryan, and that is why we did not want you to know. I was wondering if you were interested in me or my inheritance. Also, I didn't want you to suffer any grief from the employees for having a connection with the boss' daughter, the company's sole heir. Just like me, her younger brother died when he was just 16 years old. So, what does being invited to a Christmas meal with your mother and father imply for me? Is this personal business, and how will it influence our relationship? Ryan, this implies I adore you and want you to come meet my family. You've stated that you don't have a family, thus business is separate. I'm asking you to spend Christmas with my family? Okay, I now know about Chloe. The CEO's name is Olivia Donan. I'm truly clueless, aren't I? She smiled. Maybe you should have a D in your name for duh. As the air cleared, all 4 of us laughed. We all had an excellent afternoon and evening. I particularly enjoyed spending time with Olivia and Chloe's mother, Barbara. I may be naive, but I had the idea that Chloe's parents would approve my request for her hand in marriage. I am very sure Chloe would say yes, but given what has occurred to me, I refuse to take anything for granted. My instincts were confirmed as Chloe jumped from the couch and onto me. I went down on one knee, holding a blue velvet package. She withdrew her lips away from my face long enough for me to pant, "Yes, yes, yes." Then I returned to her, drawing all the oxygen from my lungs. Not that I didn't appreciate her passion. 3 months later, we held a little wedding. There was no one on my side of the church save Nathan and Rachel and a few new friends I had made. After a honeymoon in the Caribbean, we returned to my flat and began our lives together. The first order of business was for Chloe to discontinue her birth control pills. We expected it to take some time before my boys met up with her egg. Let the good times roll. We went to the county courthouse for name changes. Chloe Reynolds went back to her maiden name, Chloe Donan. With society's more accepting attitude toward gender identity, marital status, and personal names, I changed my name to Ryan Timothy Donan. When we asked for his consent, Olivia was thrilled and delighted that I adopted the name Donan. With tears in his eyes, he whispered, "Thank you, son." My friend Nathan discovered a file of Jessica banging Kevin and decided to avenge both his and my hurt. Tyler, Nathan's son, was the same age as the boys at Jessica's school and participated in sports alongside them. Tyler sent Nathan the text addresses of several junior and senior lads. Using a new address, Nathan sent a copy of Jessica and Kevin screwing to each of these people, labeled Principal Screwing Class 101. Jessica was strolling down the corridor between classes when she heard someone bark harshly. She turned to face the sound, thinking it weird. A small group of senior males smirked at her. She assumed she had a button undone on her shirt, or that her skirt had ridden up her thigh. As she turned around, she was startled by the sound of bark, bark, bark coming from another group of lads. Remembering that the school's mascot was a bulldog, she anticipated some team building before the game this Wednesday night. The barking stopped immediately when she entered the office and continued for the following 2 hours. She did not hear the barking repeated, but when she exited the office, it resumed from one end of the corridor to the other. It sounded like she had just walked into a dog kennel during feeding time. Occasionally, there was a howl, but usually bark, bark, bark resounded wherever she went. None of the other employees were experiencing this occurrence. The next morning, as she stepped onto the concrete parking lot, it sounded like the start line of the Alaskan Iditarod dog sled race. All of the barks were now aimed at her as if she had a 50-speaker surround sound system turned up to maximum volume. She hurried into the building, her gaze fixed on the concrete rather than the dog impersonators. She sighed with relief as the door slid shut behind her. As she walked to her office, a single male voiced the bark of a dog. The deep voice sounded like Kevin's, but what was he doing here? Why would he say such things? Like a ton of bricks falling on her head, she recognized what had occurred. The boys had a copy of one of the dog screwing videos Kevin had shown her. She skipped over the topic of how the video got out. What am I going to do now? She thought. My work, career, and dignity would be ripped to shreds. She rushed into her office and shut the door. Were her employees smirking at her? Did they know what had happened? Who had watched the video? What should she do now? Halfway through the first school hour, when the halls were empty, she ran out of her office. She shouted over her shoulder that she was sick and would be returning home. She certainly didn't lie to them. She truly felt sick, but she didn't return home. She roared down the street to Anderson Manufacturing, rushing into Kevin's office and snarling, "Did you distribute videos of us screwing? If you did, I will murder you." Kevin could see and feel the fire of her wrath. He quickly stammered, "Nope, I have them all in here. And the only person who has them," as he patted his computer and opened the file. "You idiot, you've been hacked. They went viral, and I'm ruined. Can this life get any worse?" Sobbing and wailing, she slumped to the floor, unsure what to do. Kevin dashed to his father's office, and they both raced back to the howling Jessica. The two brilliant minds agreed to return her to her home, close the door, and return to work. Jessica was forced to resign as principal 5 years later after losing the respect of staff, pupils, and the school board. Her expertise in her industry led to the creation of a new career for her. Her new position was in the unfinished basement office, where she assessed all of the new state and national procedures and policies. She made very little face-to-face interaction with other personnel and none with pupils. With greasy, dirty hair, clothed in flannel pajama bottoms and fluffy slippers, she arrived at the building around 6 a.m. and left an hour before school ended. Her reputation drove her to live as a recluse, traveling out of town for groceries. Ethan seemed to be sent home frequently for fighting. It's impossible to avoid fighting when his classmates constantly called his mother Lassie the Wonder Dog. At first, several men expressed an interest in her, and gave her dog biscuits with their phone numbers attached, hoping for a response. After I departed, the company's financial status took a toilet-like whirling dive due to client loss, increased CFO and CEO spending, and bad management by Kevin, all of which jeopardized the company's economic sustainability. In order to pay off the mortgage and other debts, George had to sell the family's 160-acre farm. The area would be turned into mid-range houses, taking advantage of the picturesque rolling topography. A business broker secured a buyer for the company, and George fired the gun, ending the family enterprise. George and Catherine had a small apartment that used a significant percentage of their Social Security payment. When George and Catherine died, the Anderson family's legacy would be limited to tombstones. Kevin and Ethan left town to pursue new jobs as used car salesmen and burger flippers. On July 1st, the company's acquirer convened an all-employee gathering to introduce the new president. George and Kevin were asked not to attend. The new shop foreman, Nathan Brown, drew attention from the curious gathering by shouting, "Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to our new president, Mr. Ryan Donan." The employees were relieved to learn that they had been sold out to a competitor rather than a large conglomerate that would sell off the equipment and dismiss everyone. The big surprise occurred when I emerged from the office, babbling and staring. Most people recognized me, but not under this name. "Hello everyone. I'm pleased to be back inside this building. Have you missed me?" This was received with a massive roar. I guess Kevin wasn't as effective a president as he believed. After assuring the assembled Donan manufacturing personnel of the old Anderson Manufacturing's planned utilization and expansion, the workers began chanting, "Donan! Donan! Of course, the name on the building and your income will be lower in manufacturing." More cheers. Thank you for your beautiful reception. I'm confident that this will be a positive development for all of us. Now allow me to present you to my family, my wife Chloe, and our son Timothy Joseph Donan. Yes, the DNA test verified he was my son. As the employees cheered, I felt a sense of relief and optimism for the future. Chloe and I stood side by side, embracing the new chapter in our lives. After years of betrayal, heartache, and uncertainty, I finally found a sense of peace and belonging. Our son, Timothy, was a symbol of our new beginning, and the journey we had taken to get here made us stronger than ever. Despite the pain and struggles, I was grateful for the love and support from Chloe and our close friends. Our bond grew deeper, and we knew that together we could overcome any challenges that lay ahead. The legacy of the Anderson family might have ended, but the Donan family's future looked bright. I continued to lead Donan Manufacturing with dedication and integrity, focusing on the well-being of our employees and the growth of the company. Chloe and I built a loving home, filled with laughter and joy, creating a safe and nurturing environment for Timothy. Our love for each other flourished, and we cherished every moment together as a family. As the years passed, we remained committed to each other, building a life full of happiness and fulfillment. We celebrated our successes, learned from our mistakes, and always supported one another through thick and thin. The journey was far from easy, but it was worth every step. And so, with a heart full of gratitude and hope, I embraced the future, knowing that the love and strength of my family would guide me through whatever life had in store. Thanks for watching. What would you do in Ryan's situation? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more stories. See you next time.